coming year, and an update on several of the plans that we have. Talking to staff and just making sure that we have what we need go forward to make future plans. Part of this request is to update the land use plan. Really, we want to identify and define what the citizens are looking for in Westlake, and as far as the percentage of commercial property versus the percentage of residential property. We have some of those things, but if you look at a lot of our older land use plans from the past, a lot of that is centered around aesthetics, and it doesn't really give us a good picture of what we need to assist in bringing to the table for P&Z and council. So that's one of the major issues of the land use plan. We also want to, through the land use plan, we'll ensure that we control how development is done here in Westlake, and we want to make sure that those controls are in place and adequate for developing the way our citizens want to develop. And we need to make sure that we're creating a balance in the tax base, right, to ensure that we're bringing enough sales tax forward as well as just relying on the property tax. So all those are super important in the land use plan and something that we need to make sure that we're talking through when we start talking about strategic planning. I know we don't have a ton of time here today to really get into the nuts and bolts of the planning. That's why I just really wanted to hit on some of these high points like the land use plan. Another big area that staff is needing some direction from council on is the parks and trails, right-of-way and median plans. A lot of those, we're getting requests from citizens throughout some different areas of town that they're, the look that Westlake has always gone for in the past is more of a natural look, where we've manicured things just a few feet off of the sidewalks and pathways and let the rest of things be a little more wild or natural. We're hearing a lot of complaints from different citizens throughout town, and really a change, a shift in mentality there, and they're looking for a little more groomed space. So hearing from council on your wishes on those things are important for us as well to be able to plan to go forward. We have a contract. We don't have a parks department, so we contract out with Smith Lawn and Tree for the majority of our landscaping uses throughout town. And if we're going to make a change in aesthetics, then and the expectation for things such as medians, then we're going to have to pull that contract and have another look. That contract's been in place for a while, and really it warrants going out for an RFQ or RFP this coming year anyways. So that's something that we'll look at doing along with updating this plan. But a good hard look at the parks and trails throughout town, I think, and is important for us and for our citizens. Next is a thoroughfare plan. As we see things change, Entrada is going to be bringing forward another change and some additions or changes within the plan development there. And as we look at what Hillwood may or may not be bringing in the future, some of the land use changes that we want to see or that council or citizens may want to see may require us to change the thoroughfare plan that was put in place years and years ago. So that thoroughfare plan is going to be important for us to update as well. And then finally, one of the ones that I think has been ignored for a long period of time is really our water and wastewater plan. Our public works system, as we talked about in the last meeting, is in disarray, and we really need to get a water model completed for the town. And that'll be us working together with developers that we know own property within town, and really developing a full plan of what the water usage and wastewater usage will be over the next several years, so that hopefully we can start building a CIP plan for the next 5 to 10 years that would encompass us being able to ensure that residents get plenty of clean water to drink, and we get rid of all the wastewater that we need to get rid of without causing us any harm. So those are the main areas that I think that we need to really take a deep dive into with the strategic planning. I know that there's going to be a list of things that council has some desires, some specific projects and things that we'll have to make sure that we work into that plan as well. But we'd like to start thinking about some future dates that we can start working through these at a different level. We may decide to do a work session prior to several different meetings and break these plans out, one per meeting or something like that, or if council would prefer to do some type of a retreat where we can get away and talk through some of this stuff and spend a day or two on it, we can do that as well. So really, staff's looking for council to give us some direction in what you would like to see as part of this strategic planning model.
Hey, Wade, when is the last plan that we've done in the town, for the town?
I believe the last one is 2017. I'll have to double check that number. That's correct.
And that's kind of the foundation where we'll start from.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then normally, how often should those things be?
Well, anytime you have a plan in place like that, really, just like any work plan or anything that you develop for a business, 3 years is pretty clear. 5 years is a little foggy. Anything past 5 years is pretty much a guess, right? I mean, it's an educated guess, but it's still a guess.
Yeah.
So I would strongly suggest that a minimum of every 3 years we're taking a look at a strategic plan. I think you should have a work plan that coincides with a strategic plan that has specific do-outs for the year. That should be updated annually. And that's something that we'd need to bring, that staff would bring to council to show steps towards the strategic plan being completed.
And so we're obviously longer than 3 years, but if we say it's every 3 years, do we put an ordinance in place to make sure? How do we make sure that gets happened?
Outstanding. We could do that.
That
Yes, sir.
happens going forward, so when the council turns over, it doesn't get lost.
Absolutely. That could be done.
Or we could break it down into 3 sets of years, right, and cycle
It's
through.
just where we don't miss it. Whatever makes sense.
Any direction from council, anything that, a way that you would like to attack this or want staff to start working through this?
Yeah, what are you proposing? I mean, obviously we have this 2017 plan. Do we start with that as a baseline, kind of catch up with where are we versus where
Yes,
we
sir.
thought we'd be, and then kind of look forward?
Yes, sir. I think that's first and foremost. We take a look at that plan. We give you a truer picture of where we are today, because a lot of that plan may have never been enacted. But we want to have a real true picture of today, and then we'll start working on what we want this place to look like tomorrow.
No, I was just going to ask, so, I mean, to the extent we ultimately get to a point where we want to develop the next phase of this plan, I assume we'd have to engage with outside help, incur additional costs to do so. But as a first step, just to kind of get up to speed with where we are, I'm assuming we don't have to do that, right?
That's correct. No, we can attack that part of the plan within staff.
Perfect.
Every department director can give us an update on what they're doing in their departments.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you want to start with direction, but I would have thought, breaking down, I assume the 2017 plan is pretty extensive. I assume it's a voluminous.
It's not as extensive as we would hope, but it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Kel Surprise, as they would say.
we will make a more extensive plan this coming.
Okay. But I think, as a first step, I would have thought just breaking down just the key areas. I mean, you mentioned here, obviously, land use, parks, trails, thoroughfare, water, wastewater plan. I think telecommunications might be another one. But just breaking it down into high-level segments, just so we can begin to get a feel. And then, like Anna was saying, either we tackle all of it together, or we break it down into, separate workshops, something like that might make some sense.
Okay. Does council prefer the separate workshops over different portions of the plan?
Can we
Or more of
start with a breakdown and then
Absolutely.
take a look at it?
Sure.
I mean, and Wade, and what I'd like to see, and it's just for our education, right? All these strategic documents, only as good as the assumptions. I'd love to be able to break down what assumptions we had in that plan around, growth and all that, and maybe it's right on, maybe it's not, but learn from that.
Yes, sir.
No, I think that's great, actually, a good point. And because, I know there's a sneak preview later when we talk about one of these developments for rezoning that's on the agenda. And one of the things it talked about was how the residential density or residential number of residential plots compares to what the comprehensive plan is. And I think it was something like 6,500 was the anticipated number of residents in Westlake. It can be kind of interesting to kind of go back to that drawing board and say, well, is that still kind of where, are we building to that expectation? Is that still where we want to be? So it's probably quite timely. And the other one that you flagged, Wade, is this idea about parks. And you mentioned earlier about, desire of certain residents who want to improve some of the public parklands. Am I correct? We only have one public space in Westlake. Is that right?
That's correct, except we
Okay.
do have the linear trail as well. That's,
And-
that's partially ours and then partially.
Because as we're approving some of these developments, are we generally conceding under the ordinances a requirement that there would be public parkland as part of these developments?
Well, there is parkland dedication along with some of these
For
developments.
30 homes, it's like an acre, I think Ron was
Right.
saying last time.
That's
But
correct.
Is that for public access technically under the ordinances, or is that supposed to be for?
It's
private
open
use
space
only?
requirement more than public access
Okay.
requirement.
And David, when you bring up the population, I have a lot of difficulty imagining us being something like 7,800, like the comprehensive plan says. So when we take a look at the assumptions, like you said, Kim, we can then really use that assessment and reflection to think about how large the school should be ultimately, and all those big questions.
Well, and it also, speaks to some of these approvals we're being asked. We talked about Villaggio recently. We have another one on, for discussion tonight. And some of these residential density questions are kind of becoming really quite timely. And we need to decide, what do we want Westlake to look like before we start approving all of these developments?
Yeah, it would be great if staff could have a document that we could go back to, because we get asked by developers all the time, hey, we have this idea, this is what we'd like to do. Staff would love to have enough confidence in knowing what the desire of council and our citizens, that we can come in and say, look, we know for a fact that you're not ever going to be able to get more than 35 homes on 26 acres, something like that. It would be very useful for staff and allows us to be more timely with these developers as they come in and ask questions.
I think it would behoove us to kind of focus on the land north of 170 with some granular detail. I think that's going to come to fruition quicker than a lot of other things, especially on the west side of town. Pretty much most of east of Davis is kind of spoken for as of today, right? Mm-hmm. So we're really talking most of the Hillwood property. We're talking remaining. And I think with the opening of Parish Lane, that's going to become a hot topic very quickly.
Okay. Anyone else have any input, any direction that they'd like to provide staff as we march forward? We'll start out, what I'm hearing is we'll start out with this, with the current plan, break that down for council, and give you an update on where we sit today.
Yeah, and just any known gaps from your experience where you think we'll also have to possibly look at as well would
Yes,
be
sir.
helpful.
That's all I have. Mayor, if you have anything else.
That's all I have. Regular meeting starts at 4:30. It's 4:17. We'll take a break until that.